So, welcome everyone. I know that you're all going to be really excited to hear. I'm kind of been referring to this as Battle of the Bees. So we've got three creative cities here today, three that I absolutely love. So with me, I have people from Bristol, Bath, and Bournemouth, and we're going to be talking about, I guess, the benefits of all of the three cities.
It's Brighton, not Bath.
Oh my, do you know, it's because I'm in Bath. That's why. Brighton. Okay, Katie, start again. We are in Brighton, Bristol, and Bournemouth, not Bath. That's just where I am today. So I now have Bath on the brain. And we're going to be talking, and I'm sure Bath is brilliant too, but they're just not here today. So I think the benefits that everyone will get from today's call is really understanding what we can do to, I guess, promote the different regions, but also understanding why all of these cities and various cities outside of London have huge benefits to your, I think, is it Work-Life-Better? We're branding it, aren't we, Anthony, rather than work-life balance. So I, certainly, can empathize with that because I chose to set my business up outside of London, having spent years working in London, moving back down to Bournemouth, which is where I grew up. And I think there's going to be some really interesting discussion around that today. So if you've only just joined us and you missed us saying it earlier, there is a Q&A at the bottom. So please do add your questions if you think of any as we're running through today. Also, please feel free to say hello to each other in the chat if you've got anything that you want to discuss or share information on your own region or any kind of things that kind of pop to mind and introduce and collaborate on the chat. I always think that's a great thing to do. But really, we're going to, I think, get straight into talking about why these three cities are brilliant places to work, live, and the benefits it can bring to you, your employees, and your business. So, Anthony, of course, you are the kind of curator of all of this. I'm going to come to you first, and you are in Bournemouth. So can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the benefits of Bournemouth, I guess, to get started?
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to share my screen in a moment, but I'm Anthony Story. I'm the director of an outfit called Silicon South. So we are a network for the creative digital tech space in and around the kind of wider Bournemouth area. So we're just really interested in trying to, I think, let people understand about what there is on offer for creative careers and how people can develop them more locally. So if I just share my screen for a second. Okay. So you can see that okay, Kelly?
We certainly can.
Great. All right. So yeah, it's about, I guess there are kind of a few things which are really important in the career. Money is obviously useful, but actually it's always more to do with, is it interesting? Am I going to be furthering my prospects? Am I going to be trying to make sure that I have something which is going to develop my career wholesomely, profitably, and in the way that I want? And I think there's a fear within the creative industries is that if you're outside of London, it's just not possible. And I think we all wanted to try and dispel that myth. So this is where we are. This is kind of like the greater Bournemouth area that I'm talking about. So you can see over here, just sort of nestled in to the left of the Isle of Wight and to the right of Weymouth. And you can see Guildford's over there, so not too far from the southeast. And then we kind of zero in a little bit. You've got this gorgeous sort of 7-8 miles of completely sandy beach along the bottom over here. You've got Poole, one of the biggest natural harbours in the world. And then you've got companies dotted. We've just listed 150 of them on here. But if you come through, there's the beach. Come through, there's actually a lot more. So we've, working with the Local Enterprise Partnership, identified over 5,000 active companies who, this is all based on SIC codes, who are working within those sectors. So there's quite a lot of choice down here. You can see there's, this includes quite a few single enterprises, one-man bands and sole traders, because you can see there's sort of 12,500 people who are employed, but it's definitely a growth area. And it's just really interesting seeing how that manifests. So these are some of the companies who are working with us on our project at the moment. But I think that there are, the overall bigger picture is within those 5,000 businesses, there are sort of very prominent industries within cybersecurity and fintech. We've got companies like JP Morgan. They employ 4,000 technologists in the area, really pushing whole financial services. You've got ESET, which is the big antivirus company. They have their UK head office locally here. Nationwide, Vitality Health, quite a few others as well. But it's not just about big names, it's the companies that we have here, which are really important agencies working with some very interesting clients who I think offer a huge amount of choice. So what we've got here is within the companies here, we've got a lot of presence in the automotive industry, clients like Porsche, Scania, Skoda, I have to go to Skoda now, but also kind of like more new environmentally conscious alternative mobility options, which are really interesting, quite dynamic. There's financial services, companies like Aon, AXA are being worked with, as well as one I mentioned before. There are companies like Beep. Beep don't really advertise who they work with because they are quite cagey, but they're supported through Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway, and they're working with some very interesting major American brands, but they're under NDA about who they're working with. So I have to dive into their website to find out a bit more. There's a fair share of marine brands, kind of obviously as you'd expect, kind of down on the coast. And then there's clothing companies like Osprey or Casio watches, and then more environmental. The Tree Council is one of the people that the companies are working with as well. There's a really good spread, and there's some really well-known global brands. So I think we'll hear the same from Bristol and Brighton as well. There's some really great opportunities to work on some sort of cutting-edge work at the same time. And then there's software. These are, again, a couple of companies we're working with at the moment. They both do .NET, Banana. They are also working with Umbraco. So a company like Talk, Think, Do, they work, as software companies, you want to be working with big data, really interesting stuff. So they work a lot with the public sector, with central government, and so working on sort of massive data sets, but not legacy systems. They're working on, the latest software stacks that people are working with. So again, it's really sort of pushing opportunities there. Banana, they work with companies like Vitality Health, the National Grid, again, sort of tackling quite engaging and broad-reaching challenges. So there's a lot of that kind of work, up-to-date, global presence, and we'll hear more from the agencies about kind of how they do it, National Grid. But in all of that, that's kind of one thing. But then I think the other thing which is really important is how the world opens up when you don't have to have an hour's commute. I think the average London time is about an hour commuting, kind of there and back. So the average commute time in a place like Bournemouth, it's okay, slightly unscientific, but kind of we talked to a lot of people, and it's between 10 and 15 minutes. So suddenly you've freed up an hour and a half, hour and three-quarters of your day. So what are you going to do with that time? So a place like Bournemouth, they've got festivals all around the year. They've got Arts Creative, they've got the Air Tattoo, they've got the Wheels Festival, big truck things. And then, of course, you've got the beach. There's a massive commitment in terms of swimming, paddle boarding with the harbour. You've got the sailing and water sports angle. So a lot of company people that rather than having that after-work drinking culture, are actually more kind of inclined to go and get involved in the pre-work swimming culture or after-work swimming. And also cycling is, again, another thing. So we're so close to the national forest, the new forest, that people will kind of go off and they'll just explore going down towards the Jurassic Park, again, really beautiful countryside. Or it's more simple things like just having time to take the dog for a walk or spending it with the family. So I think for me, those are the things which make all of this special.
Anthony, thank you so much. That was really interesting. I mean, it makes me very proud to, live and be part of that community. I think, for me, just to add on, as obviously someone who used to work in London, and I have been back in Bournemouth now for 15 years, but, all of our clients, we've got a lot of the big MarTech companies we work with are actually headquartered in New York. It doesn't really matter where you are anymore. And I think as creative businesses, it's really important for all of us to enable ourselves to be creative. And I think being outside of London and the rat race, it does enable you to have a bit more clarity, to, you know, have a bit more zen time at the beach, or, you know, in the forest, or wherever it might be, that actually enables you to be creative. Because if you're sat on a tube, or you're, you know, dashing around, like, in fact, I was talking to someone about this yesterday, you know, how in London, you know, people just don't talk to you as much. It's just not as friendly as it is. So actually, I think having these spaces and, you know, less commuting time, a bit more time to be and to think, actually enables us to have better, more creative ideas. And I think that's something that I'm really, really interested in tapping into with all of you guys today. So who am I going to come to next? I'm going to come to Bristol next. So Bristol, over to you guys. Can you give us your view? First of all, introduce yourselves, but also your view on why Bristol is best.
Well, it's not a competition.
No, it's not. It's not.
Obviously. But first thing to say is probably we are, even though we're called Bristol Creative Industries, we do cover Bath as well. So it was fair to say Bath. You know, so it's 4 Bs, not just 3 Bs. So a lot of our members are in Bath, which is a beautiful city, and yeah, very close to Bristol, as those of you who know this region would know. So my name's Chris Thurling. I am chair of Bristol Creative Industries, which I'll introduce in a second. And I'll just let my colleague Kate introduce herself. Hi, Kate.
Hello, I'm Kate Gorringe. I'm creative director of Mr. B and Friends, which is a brand agency in Bristol. And I made the move from London 8 years ago.
Great. So Bristol Creative Industries, some of you may have known us by our former name. We used to be called Bristol Media. We were set up in 2005, largely to bring the community, the really diverse, broad creative community in this city region together. So Bristol, Bath together, that whole conurbation is around about 1 million people. I'm not going to sort of say all of, you know, cover the same ground as Anthony. I think a lot of the work-life balance things we have down here, access to the coast, access to the Welsh mountains, access to countryside, you know, a great quality of life. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the region that we represent. So in terms of the kind of makeup of our membership, there's probably a fairly even balance between film and television companies, digital agencies, marketing and advertising, PR, and publishing. And then there's a whole kind of long tail of more specialist niche businesses that make up our membership. We've got about 340 business members who are paying members of our network, about 250 freelancers, and about 400 or so students. And I think the thing about BCI, that what it really represents is this city's strong creative community. That you've got that many people who are willing to pay to be part of an organisation. And I think that's probably one of the things that I hear most commonly from people that come and relocate in Bristol from London, is just how friendly a city it is, how much collaboration there is, and a genuine sense of community in what's going on down here. In terms of some of the main companies, I mean, there are literally, I mean, those are the 340 member companies. There are literally thousands probably of creative and tech businesses in this part of the world. But some just to pull out, obviously the BBC is in Bristol, and it's probably the kind of anchor business for in terms of the history of the creative industries in the city. 25% of all of the world's natural history film production comes out of Bristol. It really is the kind of Hollywood of natural history filmmaking. Channel 4 have recently moved here with one of their commissioning hubs, which seems to be going quite well. We've obviously in the animation space, we've got Arden Animations in Bristol, whoever most people will know. And then, yeah, we've got a huge range of both sort of network-owned agencies, but a huge number of independent agencies. My day job is chair of a business called Armadillo. We're about 80 people. We work for McDonald's and Disney as our major clients. Kate, I'll let you have a plug for Mr. B's. Talk about who you work for.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a very wide range of clients, which I think is one of the interesting things moving out of London, where people tend to have to be very specialist. Our clients range from sort of hyper-local brands like Bristol Airport and Bristol Zoo, also sort of national brands that are either based in Bristol, like OVO Energy, or Persimmon Homes, who are based sort of just outside of Bath, as well as further afield. And then international brands, I think, to your point, Katie, it almost doesn't matter where we are. So we work with Lego, we work with IHG Hotels, we work with Britvic, they absolutely don't care where we are. So that works really well for us. Yeah.
Yeah, so just to reiterate Anthony's point, really, that if there is a perception outside of, outside of our cities that big brands don't come and commission work in our cities, then that really is not the case at all. You'll find probably most of the major brands in some way or another are commissioning work out of the Bristol or Bath part of the world. And then finally, Katie, I thought I'd just quickly talk about the tech side of things. Probably worth pointing out that in Bristol, maybe a slight difference between Wired Sussex and Silicon South and Bristol Creative Industries is that we have a sister organisation called Tech Spark, who really cover the tech sector in the city, which is really huge in its own right. So BCI is more focused on the creative industries rather than the tech stuff, although obviously there's an increasing overlap between those two sectors. So I'm not necessarily the expert to talk about the tech sector in the city, but I thought I'd just mention a few things just to give you an idea of how broad the ecosystem is and the sort of infrastructure around tech is in Bristol. So the University of Bristol has got something called Set Squared, based near the train station in Bristol, which is the world's leading university-led tech incubator. We've got another incubator called Science Creates in the city, which is more about kind of deep tech and wet science, if you like. University of the West of England has got the robotics lab. And then the University of Bristol has also just founded something called the Digital Futures Institute, which has received a huge amount of money from the government to research sort of future technologies like VR and AR. So there's a big infrastructure here, a lot of it based around the 4 universities in the region: Bristol, Bath, Spa, and UWE.
Gosh, you're all
That's me done.
making me want to move house now. Okay, I'm going to just move around Bristol, Brighton, Bournemouth. Maybe I'll set up in all of them. But again, showing some really amazing examples there as to why, I certainly felt when I moved back 15 years ago from London to Bournemouth, I was worried, but actually there are so many more opportunities outside of London. And I think this, is really highlighting that. So last, but definitely not least, Brighton, let's come to you guys. Would you like to both introduce yourselves and share a bit of the kind of overview of the sector in Brighton?
Sure. So I'm Alex Morrison. I'm one of the directors at Wired Sussex. I looked it up this morning, and Wired Sussex was started in 1996, so quite a long time ago. And it was started to represent and kind of aggregate the community that was starting up around digital and tech and media and the creative industries in Brighton. And I'm here today with Beth. Beth, do you want to say a bit, and I'll then talk a bit more about Brighton?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I made the move from London to Brighton at the end of 2021, so I'm pretty fresh to seaside living. And I work at a design agency called Baxter and Bailey, and I'm just in the studio now, actually, so you'll see people around. Yeah, we've coming up to our I've only started working at Baxter and Bailey when I moved to Brighton, but they've been going for about 10 years. And interestingly, they were originally in London and then made the move to Brighton, and have been down here for quite a while now. And we do, again, a very broad range of work. We work very locally. We work with international clients, we work with clients all around the UK, but all very much focused on kind of creating work for good and really helping positive change and using our skills in design and strategy to do that. So it's a very positive place to work and a pretty nice place to live as well.
Thanks, Beth. Yeah, and I think that is a thing in Brighton, and it's always been a thing. I came to Brighton from London via Oxford back in the 1980s, and I was attracted originally by the universities and the output of talent from there, and the opportunities to work with what was some very exciting work going on at the universities. And then I kind of discovered the creative side of Brighton, and the way in which the creative parts of our community interacted with our tech parts to make something really interesting. And this year we're going to celebrate 10 years of something called the Fuse Report. So about 10 years ago, there was some research conducted between Wired Sussex and the University of Brighton and the University of Sussex, looking at what was special about what's going on down here in Brighton. And what they discovered through this research was that there's a very particular thing in Brighton. It may also be happening in Bristol and Bournemouth for all I know, but it's certainly true in Brighton, that the companies that were doing best and most interesting and experiencing the highest rates of growth for their businesses were those that were combining tech and creative skills into a single proposition. And you know, I know that Baxter and Bailey are both very creative and technically adept as well, because we worked with them. My company, CogApp, which I work in outside my White Sussex thing, is again an interesting combination of creative and tech, and we do lots of work for creative businesses ourselves. And I think that's a theme which runs through Brighton and gives it a particular character that is very attractive. And it's always been the case that the priority down here in Brighton was, I think, to first of all, to have businesses that worked for the people in them. And that's, I think, coming out of London. I worked for a big agency in London. I worked for a consulting firm, which is now called Accenture. And it was very clear that that business was for the partners, and they were going to beat the hell out of anybody who worked for them and extract the maximum kind of financial juice out of anyone who came through their doors. And some people would do very well. If I'm sure if I'd stayed there, I'd have done all right. But that's not the kind of world I want to live in, really. I came to Brighton, started my own business, and like the other people in Brighton, I think, I've tried to run a business that was a human business, that was a business that worked for the people who were in it, and where the business would be a business and a community at the same time, that we would prosper, we would do good work, but we would have a nice time. I have in my business, we have a number of directors, but we have one who's the Minister of Fun. We do stuff that is completely off the wall. We have, yeah, I won't go into the details, but anyway, it's a different way of thinking of it. It's a different prioritization, I think. I think if you just want to make money, go to London. Yeah, you'll probably make more money in London, but will you have a better life? Had I stayed in London, I would have had a miserable life, I think. But coming to Brighton and the people that I know in Brighton, we prosper. Sure, we do really well, but we also we have community. Brighton is incredibly collaborative. One of the things Wired Sussex represents, that collaborative spirit. And as I wander around Brighton, just keep bumping into people, and it's like we help each other out. It's really, really nice. And then we cross trade. Oh, come and help me, come and do something with me. That kind of spirit is possible in a place the size of Brighton, in a way that it is quite hard to do in larger, more commercially focused cities. And the irony of it is that we still do really well. So we've got companies like Brandwatch that have started down here that have done incredibly well. We've got companies like MPB. MPB is a local startup started by a guy called Matt Baxter, who's a he began in photography, and then he started selling kit, and then he went into e-commerce, and he's now got sort of the eBay of second-hand photography gear. It's an incredible business, but it's just, you know, coming up out of the kind of the undergrowth of Brighton. You get fantastic businesses, and you really, you know, to pick up on the theme that Anthony was putting on earlier, you just really don't need to be in London to do great work for great clients, and have a really good time. And you know, Brighton has been flying that flag at least since 1996, and I'm very happy to wave it alongside Bristol and Bournemouth, because it's the truth, and it needs to be more widely known. I think that's the worry that I have, and the reason that I'm keen to do this event is because I think so many people don't know. So many people naturally assume that their best career choice is to get on that train and go up to the smoke, and actually you don't have to do that. There are these companies, there are these organizations that offer you really interesting work in a human environment, for working for nice people with nice people, and doing crazy, great, wonderful work.
I love that. I think you've
That's my pitch.
something super interesting there around the creative communities as well. So yeah, I'm excited to hopefully really dig into some of these subjects we've been talking about. But before we do that, what I realized we didn't do, Anthony, is introduce your lovely co-panelist. So obviously everyone here has got their own kind of agency representing the region. Sam, would you like to introduce yourself quickly as well, and tell us a little bit about the business that you work for?
Sure, I will forgive you, Anthony.
You.
I will speak to you again. Yeah, sure. So hi, it's lovely to be here with everybody. I'm Sam Smith, and I actually run April 6 Mobility. So April 6 Mobility is an agency that does specialise in the automotive sector. So we've got the Scania, Porsche, Volkswagen Group, BMW Mini clients. But I'm part of a bigger organisation that focuses also in technology and science. So we've got agencies around the UK and also in North America, Singapore, and I just sent my first account manager out to Japan, which is super exciting. And then we are also part of a bigger organisation called The Mission, which is about 1,200 employees, but made up of the Mission Marketing Group, made up of about 26 agencies now. So I think the fact that these bigger groups are looking at agencies out in the region now as, you know, really, really viable. I think we've been ignored for some time. So I think now we are shouting a bit louder. And I think, you know, things like events like today, it's really interesting, because we need to do more of it. And we've talked a lot about the collaboration in our own regions, but actually to do something like today where, you know, Bournemouth, Brighton and Bristol, we're all together, I think is super exciting, and we need to do more of it.
Definitely. I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's about highlighting the opportunities and,
Yeah.
you know, getting rid of that fear that you move out of London and that's the end of your career, because that is kind of how I felt. You know, I had my daughter quite young, and I was worried that I was, you know, at 25 moving back out of London, back home, that I was not going to have a career. And actually the agency, creative and tech community, certainly in Bournemouth, and I know the same in Bristol and in Brighton, because I've got family that have careers in both places in this space, are, you know, as good, if not better, than London in some ways. And I think that's what we really want to highlight today. So first topic. Oh, Anthony, go on. I think you might be on mute, so you might need to come off mute.
It's interesting, picking up on Sam's point, that there's a company, Sideshow, a Bournemouth company, which has reversed the tables completely. So they've grown to quite a good scale, and now they're just going out buying companies across the world, and they're becoming the largest independent marketing agency in the UK now. But they've got offices, like you say, in Singapore, North America. So yeah, it's interesting to see how kind of the quote-unquote provinces are kind of turning around and actually stealing a march to start a kind of whole growth development.
Yeah, and I think, you know, also lockdown did us a great favour in this. You know, so many people, that my brother's a great example, you moved out of London, you know, back to somewhere where they can have a much better work-life balance. So I think there's been a huge shift in change within businesses as well, understanding that people can work from home, people can work from anywhere. You know, the way that we work is definitely different to how it once was. And I think that opens up opportunity for all of us, one, to live and work in different ways. And you know, there's lots of people that I speak to that, you know, you go and work remotely from Bali or wherever they want to be in the world, and adding another B in there. So yeah, I think that what we can really focus on today is the opportunities as well as the benefits to, you know, living and working outside of, you know, the capital city, as much as I do love London as well. But I think that this is really important for us to highlight. So I would like to start by speaking about the career opportunities, because I think that's hopefully what a lot of our lovely guests today are interested in. And I think, again, you know, the commitments and the balance that you can make as a business outside of London, you know, in all honesty, are also different and maybe easier to do, because there is less of a commute. You know, it's easier to get around. So I'd like to start by talking about, I guess, specifically the career opportunities in each region. I'm going to come to Brighton. I am going to come to Brighton first. Bethany, obviously you've made this move quite recently. Tell us about, you know, the career opportunities, and when you were searching, what kind of, you know, brought you to the region, and what do you see as the opportunities for your career now you're outside of London?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly sort of new to the move anyway, and I think for me, like you're saying with lockdown, kind of going back to a bit of my story, is I was in London for about 8 or 9 years, and lockdown obviously pushed us all over the place, and I kind of reassessed where I was and where I wanted to be, and wasn't quite keen to go back to London life, and wanted a little bit of a change, really. And to be honest, a lot of the Bs that we're talking about today, when I was there looking for jobs, I was looking everywhere around the UK. I was looking Bristol, Bath, Scotland, all over, because I just wanted to kind of see what was out there. And I think what really surprised me, and this kind of what you're saying, is a lot came back. I wasn't quite expecting there to be so many opportunities in all of these places. I just assumed that there was less. And of course there is less, because there's less people, but so many things. And I actually almost felt a bit overwhelmed as where to actually wanted to live and where I wanted to apply. And actually with Brighton, it popped up, and funnily enough, Brighton wasn't actually somewhere I was considering going to. It wasn't like this. The plan that I'm leading now was a planned thing. It just happened so organically, and I think that's why I love it so much, and I really enjoy being here. Is that it was never kind of forced upon, or any sort of decision that I'd planned to make. But I think that it's definitely, there's so many opportunities here, and now that having been here for a year and a half and speaking to people and meeting other agencies and talking to people in the area, I've realised that there is a lot of opportunity, and something that we're doing a lot at Baxter and Bailey is working with students coming straight out of the universities and also the schools, and getting them in to do work experience placements and internships, and just showing them the opportunity for career progression in Brighton. So they don't necessarily need to obviously you can consider London and other places after uni, but also helping them consider potentially staying in Brighton as well once they graduate, and knowing that there's career opportunities there in all of these agencies, not just ours, and realising that there is that potential to kind of grow and build a career here rather than rushing off to London. So that's been a very interesting experience as well from my perspective, because I was at uni in Bath as well, and my first thought was, right, off to London, here I go. But now in Bath and Bristol, there's so many opportunities, and I think if I knew about those back then, maybe I would have stayed. So we're trying to kind of show people that in Brighton as well.
Yeah, amazing. And I guess also, I mean, all of the regions have amazing universities, but how have you found day-to-day life since moving, Bethany? Because there must be some, I mean, Brighton is such, I mean, they do say it's London by the sea, don't they? But there's so much going on. I'm getting shaking heads there. Not liking the idea of that, Phil.
I mean,
I guess more of your personal life and how it's changed, you know, you outside of work, I guess, which will naturally impact you in work because you're a whole person.
Yeah, I mean, pretty massively, to be honest. I'm originally from Cornwall, so for me, moving to Brighton was a lovely kind of join up of both all the things I love, being by the sea, and also the culture and creativity that comes with living in Brighton as well. So yeah, I'm going to fall into that like classic bag of people that go see something before work. I know it's very cliche, but I do that, and I do it after work, and I've met loads of friends through doing that as well, and like built a community of friends through that. And I think it's also important to mention that there's so many opportunities for like creative networking and things in Brighton as well. There's lots of events I go to, lots of crafting events as well. Again, obviously there is the pub culture, there's drinking and everything like that, but you don't have to go to London to kind of get that culture hit. You can stay here, and there's all sorts. I go to lots of comedy, I go to lots of theatre. I don't have to go up to London and do all these things. I can do them here, but equally, I can, for me, the commute, I've always been a cyclist and a walker, even in London, but here in Brighton, I walk the long way. I take my swimming stuff. I go for a swim. Like a day like today, it's just like, you wouldn't want to be anywhere else. And like you said, I come into work fresh on a Monday, having done that, and I'm so much more creatively like ready to face the day than I may have been if I'd been sat on the tube and dozing off, which is what would normally happen. So all of those things coming together, like you said, they do impact work. They massively have improved my life outside of work, but it has a knock-on effect to how I feel when I'm in the studio as well. So yeah, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else now.
Yeah, see, I knew I was going to want to move house after. Definitely have to have 2 new homes. So I can totally concur with you. I love that, and I think this is really important, is that we forget the whole person comes to work. We are humans. So how we live and operate outside of work in the places that we live and work has a huge impact on our creativity. And I think that's something that we certainly, as agencies, and I know a lot of the panel here are agencies, we need to talk about that more to clients as well. So 100%, I think you've highlighted some really interesting things there. Thank you so much, Bethany. I'm now going to come over to Bristol. So Kate, it feels like this is your turn for the mic. So can you tell us a little bit about Bristol, and I guess, again, the opportunities that there are for growing your career or launching your career in Bristol?
Definitely. So I moved about 8 or 9 years ago, and I had a desire to get out of London. But I was still very much at the peak of my career, so I was really concerned about losing step with the creative industries and the quality of the work that I would expect to come out of London, and could I find it elsewhere? I didn't have any connection with Bristol at all. I had one client who was Lloyds Bank, who's headquartered in Bristol, and I used to come on the train quite a lot and thought, oh, this is quite a cool city, nice harbour and all that. But apart from that, I didn't know anything. But when I did my research, it was very apparent that Bristol has a huge creative scene. They're sort of, I guess it's like the cultural hub of the Southwest, I would say, in terms of attracting talent and attracting industry. We have, on the technology side, we have Silicon Gorge, as we call it, the Avon Gorge. So there was huge opportunities here. And so that's what really attracted me to the place. And I think the other great thing about Bristol, anybody who knows it at all knows that it has a very, very distinctive personality. It's got a very independent spirit. It's obviously the home of Banksy, and that all feeds into the creative spirit of the place. It amazed me how few chains there are here, for instance. All the shops are independent, the restaurants are independent. One of my big things is dining out. One of the things I was really dreading about leaving London was I'm going to run out of places to eat, because it's just going to be chains. Bristol is an incredible food scene, absolutely incredible. There's new restaurant openings every other week, it feels like. And so from a cultural perspective, it has that kind of London vibe about it, I think, in terms of feeling very confident about itself and its place in the world. But then also having that work-life balance. Like you say, I walk to work. Most people I work with do, or they get on one of the scooters that are now everywhere. And Bristol is also, it's got a big city feel, but it unlike other sort of urban conurbations, it doesn't bleed into other cities. It's surrounded by green. We've got the Cotswolds, to the north, we've got Devon and Cornwall to the south, We've got, you know, Wales, you know, and the Welsh Mountains just to the west. So actually we're surrounded by fantastic countryside and access to the coast. So really, it's got a fantastic balance, I think, between creative opportunity, you know, and lifestyle, which I love.
Yeah, the lifestyle of all of the cities is amazing. And that's why I, you know, frequently, you know, go to all of the, well, not just to visit my family, but because I love all of these places. You know, of course I go to London a lot as well, but I just feel that there's, you know, there's so much more life and so much more going on than I think often we realize. And the career opportunities as well as that work-life balance is just amazing. A huge I never thought, you know, in my early 20s, sort of almost kicking and screaming, moving out of London, that I would love living outside of London as much as I do. And I'm, you know, just like you were saying, Bethany, one of those people that is totally mad and goes sea swimming in the morning. We've got things like saunas on the beach at Sandbanks. And I'm actually doing that on Friday morning. I'm going to go for sauna, sea swim, running along the beach. So we're all so blessed and so lucky. These cities have so much to offer. So yeah, big thank you for highlighting, you know, Bristol, Kate, for us. So career opportunities in Bournemouth. I'm going to come to you now, Samantha. Do you want to share some of the opportunities and I guess, you know, things that you love about being in Bournemouth?
I think for me, so I started my agency career, I suppose, quite late in life. And I was always client side, yes, I know, but always client side in financial services. It was a very big sector in Bournemouth. But I was working with the agencies in London. So I had my children quite young too. And they were sort of 6 and 10. And I thought, do you know what? I really want to work agency side. So believe it or not, I, you know, went to a headhunter and said, right, okay, I'm ready. I'm going to join the agency life. Automatically just thought London. And they said, you know what? There is this job in there's this vacancy on the south coast. I said, where on the south coast? And they wouldn't tell me. So I had to go to London for the interview, would you believe? And then they said, oh, well, actually it's in Bournemouth. And I said, well, that's weird because I live in Bournemouth. You know, why didn't you just tell me? Couldn't I have interviewed in Bournemouth? Anyway, but I started life as an account director and now running the agency. So for me, my role, I feel now, is giving back and helping people achieve their aspirations as well. I feel I've achieved mine. I've been very fortunate and I'm doing absolutely what I love. So, you know, I make it really a positive, you know, we same as Brighton and Bristol, really, we support everybody's outside of work sort of well-being as well. So we make sure, you know, we've got the Sea Swim Club as well. We do stepathons every month, which gets, or not every month, but every other month, which gets a bit competitive, and we all start walking and, you know, people walk into work. We're very lucky that we're based on a farm. So we've got lots of surrounding fields and that to walk around at lunchtime. And that really helps because the developers will go out at lunchtime and they'll spend time talking with each other, but more often than not, they're actually solving problems, you know, with work. And they're just talking together about, oh, you know, and perhaps we could try it this way, perhaps we could look at this, and that for me is super exciting. So we do take career development quite seriously in that we're sort of members of the IPA, so we all have to do our continual professional development, and I'm very proud that we've got gold memberships. I think there's only about 38 agencies in the UK that have that gold status. I mean, this year we're going for platinum. So I think that proves that we want people to feel you can have a career here in Bournemouth. You don't need to leave and go elsewhere. And you know, I've got 8 people that started as AEs and are now ADs. So we're really progressive, I think, in trying to push that development for people, because we want people to stay and love the area as much as we do.
I think there's one thing that you guys do, which is kind of symptomatic of what a lot of agencies do, which is just being a bit more flexible with work. Yeah. We do 4-day weeks, let people so how does that work?
Well, I think, you know, because we do live in such a beautiful area and people do have other interests, and I think, you know, lockdown sort of enhanced that as well, I suppose, and got people thinking about what else they might want to do with their lives. So we've taken a decision that if people do have extracurricular activities or other interests, then we let them work a 80% contract or, you know, 4-day week. to pursue their other interests on that other day. And then that, for me, like Katie was saying about your whole self, if you feel more fulfilled by being able to do everything that you want to do, then actually when you come into the agency, then you're naturally more productive, more engaged. So yeah, it's worked really well for us. We've got a few people on 80% contracts pursuing other things.
Yeah, I think that flexible working, look, let's hope all companies are starting to foster this more and have learned from lockdown and, I guess just the world changing. But, we do at Street, we have flexible, I now brand it. We used to do a 4-day week, and we've actually changed that and put the onus on everyone else to make their own decision, where they go, look, if you want to work Monday to Thursday and get all your hours done, within that, and have flexible Fridays and take Fridays off, I think that's something that we do really well outside of London. I know that London companies do it as well. Of course, there's the Googles of the world, and there's big businesses, in London that, that also kind of, foster these kind of flexible working. But I certainly see businesses outside of London doing that a lot more. Now, I have had a question or a couple of questions in, and I can see very kindly that some people are already answering them, but I'm going to put this question to the panel. So Christophe has asked, do you see clients for creative businesses moving out of London? And as well as that, what kind and size of businesses are they? Would anyone like to take that question?
Ooh, it's a big one. We actually see clients for creative businesses moving out of London. Oh, well, I guess when we won Porsche, we were lucky enough to secure that. I think traditionally they would have looked at London agencies because they feel they need that creativity, that sort of talent that they think you can only get in London. And I remember having a conversation with the marketing director, actually, and specifically before we were appointed, about how big is the talent pool? Do you suffer? Is it big enough to support clients of our size? And absolutely yes, because we're very fortunate. We've got the unis, and Anthony showed some figures earlier about how many people are employed in the creative industry in our area, and it's 13,000, was it 14,000, something like that. So we have a very large talent pool. So I think probably they need to be helped on that decision. But there's, we fight for or pitch, we fight for the bigger work all of the time. None of our clients actually are local. Because you said earlier, it doesn't matter where you're based anymore. So I think it's really proving.
There's one element. Another element to that is that for the clients, a lot of clients aren't really London based. They've got head offices in London, but their operations aren't in London. And the shift that I see is not so much about them relocating, it's about broadening their minds, thinking, I don't have to pay London rates. I can get really good, both Beth and Kate talk about some of the work that they're doing. There's really great quality work being produced. And I think the shift is that people are realizing they can go somewhere else to go and get that work. And actually, some of the times, it's the people who are in the same areas as them. So, we've got, there's a massive manufacturing company like Cobham, which is really big here, and they're going, oh yeah, could use a local agency. And I think that's the shift in mentality that we're seeing. Do you see that? Is that the same kind of in Bristol, Kate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, there's our clients are all over the place, as I said at the start, some are in London, but at various other places internationally. We do actually work for quite a lot of businesses in Bristol. I think because it is a slightly larger city, there's some of those, like I mentioned, some of those companies like OVO are here and Dyson's up the road, so some very big local employers and clients of creative businesses. And I think there's a recognition, and I think this is growing, that actually the quality of the creative industries outside of London is just as strong. So clients, I think, are now much more open to looking outside of London because they recognise that actually there's some amazing creative hubs elsewhere. That's really working for us, I think.
Yeah, us agencies, as always, are leading the way, and we're teaching the clients. But we certainly see, we work with a lot of tech companies, and most of them, are headquartered in the States. Yet, their staff are everywhere, like you said, Anthony. You know, they don't have to be based out of a big office in London, and then people aren't forcing people into the office anymore. So actually, most of our clients are remote, working remotely with no main physical location. And I see that a huge, you know, to go back to your question, Christoph, I definitely see tech companies, you know, forward thinking tech companies really owning that. You know, they realize that you don't have to have this big expensive London office anymore, and that actually you can do a lot to give back to your staff. And some of the fantastic initiatives that you were talking about there, I think, you know, Sam, some of the things that you can then invest in for your business outside of outside of spending lots of money on an office, can actually benefit you in other ways, and do better things with that money. Of course, Bethany, I can see that you've got your hand up. Thank you very much. I love the emojis on Zoom. Do you have also something to share on this?
Yeah, I was just going to say as well, like from like another perspective is we like we're saying about working with clients like internationally and across the UK as well. And another thing that we really enjoy working on within Baxter and Bailey, and I think that in Bournemouth and Bristol, you guys probably have the same sort of projects, is kind of linking back to that point about community. And we do a lot of projects where we work like directly with we're really embedded in Brighton, and we work with clients that are a lot of the time charities or maybe community projects that don't have like the same level as funding as like kind of some of our bigger clients, but we work on really lovely projects with them, and we help them kind of communicate what they want to communicate within that project. And it also just brings us closer together as a community as well. It gives us a proper base. So as well as those international clients, as well as working with you know, New Scientist, Oxford University Press, like some of these other ones, we are also creating a real community in our area, and forming those bonds with clients on our doorstep. And then quite often that leads to other projects on our doorstep as well. And it makes us feel very much like we belong in Brighton too, and that we're able to help those people. So it's kind of like the other side of it as well.
Yeah,
it allows you to have those connections with people that you're potentially next door to, like Brighton Women's Centre, who we're just down the road from, who we helped with a few years ago. So yeah, it's two kind of sides.
Yeah, and it starts to play into, sorry, I interjected there, but it really starts to play into sustainability and, you know, working, you know, with local companies, supporting your community. I think there's, you know, we're really starting to see a lot of that. Although, again, you know, I don't have any local clients. Let's hope one day I do. But I do think that we're seeing a move towards that. You know, we're all more conscious around, you know, how we're spending our money, you know, in day-to-day life, but also within business. Jack has asked a brilliant question, and I'm going to do some positioning here because it's quite a long question, but actually not too long. So Jack has worked in both Brighton and Bournemouth, mainly Bournemouth. He works, I think, with yourself, Sam. And he's asked, he's asked a great question, and I see this as well. So what he's saying here is that you see a lot of graduates and junior creatives as people are coming out of these amazing universities that we all have. And then you also see a lot of C-suite, you know, director level, when they've had enough of London, coming back. But what we're missing is those kind of, you know, often, and I definitely can concur with this, is those kind of mid-weight or the mid-weight, you know, talent. So it seems that, you know, at some point people feel that they need to move elsewhere, London maybe, and then, you know, they get fed up of London and then they come back. So has anyone in the group, and I'm going to leave this totally open, got any thoughts on what we can do to try and, well, apart from doing today, yeah, exactly, but what we can try and do to I guess, you know, nurture and keep people, you know, throughout their careers, rather than feeling like they need to move off?
I think from my perspective, in Bristol, we actually have quite a lot of people who come and study in Bristol and never leave. And I think a lot of that is to do with, it's partly about city culture, and that's what people are looking for, the sort of richness within the city, not just the countryside around it. But I think the other thing is about having a really strong creative community. And I think this is where organizations like the ones on this call today are absolutely critical, in terms of pulling the community together so people feel like they're part of something which is really vibrant and thriving, and where they have got sort of professional futures, that they can build all of their experience within the region, rather than feeling like they've got to go to London to get it on their CV. And I think so that's partly our job in terms of making them feel like they're part of something really thriving, and also communicating out to the wider world as well. I think that actually you can have a really fantastic professional career throughout your career here. So that's down to us, I think.
Definitely creating those communities is super important.
Right,
Yeah, I've got some thoughts.
Hi, Jacko. Lovely to not see you, but hear from you.
Well, I think kind of the question comes into, what do people in that kind of midweight talent actually want from life? And there's a bit of a philosophical debate kind of in underpinning this to some extent as well. Is that, you know, okay, when I spent my time in London, I was there for 10, 15 years. Fantastic, loved it, kind of like, but it was exactly kind of where I wanted to be. But the reality was there was a perception of a lack of choice. So there's this thing in terms of, you know, we are the most centralized country in Europe. So it's really hard. So if you think of someone like Germany, Munich is every bit as powerful as Berlin. And because they've got autonomy there in a way that we just aren't allowed to have in this country. And what that means is you've got these vibrant, fantastic places. And the perception is London is the only place that really offers that, because that's where all the trains go, the roads go, HS2 goes, and the money goes. So that's just kind of the philosophical side of it. So then you think, well, what do you have to try and present? And I guess that's what we're trying to do through outreach like this and through these sort of campaigns. And we're blessed to be supported by agencies like April 6 and the other ones I showed earlier on, is to go, actually, there is still a hell of a lot of stuff which is going on in Brighton, in Bristol. And, you know, I've spent time in all of the cities and in Bournemouth. So we can't compete with London. We have to be realistic about this. You know, London is a really special place, and in terms of its size, its vibrancy, but it doesn't suit everybody. And there's a huge amount of people who want stuff from life, which is exactly the things that the other three places offer in the south. So I think that what our job is to try and communicate that as broadly as possible, as widely as possible. So people go, oh, there is choice. I hadn't really realized there was that much choice. So by doing things like this and just keep pushing these messages out through the networks, but as agencies as well, to kind of keep getting that message out there, hopefully we can gradually shift perspective, because it's really hard given the kind of lack of government support there is for initiatives like this.
Yeah, definitely. It's about faming it and keeping on talking and you know, together as communities coming together. I can see, Phil, you also have your hand up. Have you got something to add on how we can help?
Alex, and it's I think what I want to say is I agree completely with Anthony, but I think we're where the ball is going to. Okay, this is the direction of travel is towards places like Bristol, Bournemouth, and Brighton. When I started my business in Brighton, it was really quite a desert, and now it's really a long way away from being a desert. It's much more like a really interesting place, and that trend is continuing. So I think we have to keep doing what we're doing, and the pendulum is swinging towards us, and that's great. But hey, there's a limit. As I said, there'll always be a place for people working in London, sure, but we offer choices.
Definitely. And I think it's about making, hopefully we've highlighted some of the amazing benefits today to moving and living and working outside of London. We have got 1 minute till we officially close. Anthony, would you like to summarize anything and kind of wrap up? I'm going to give you the opportunity to wrap up today, because I think we've heard some really interesting things. And in fact, there's so much more that we could delve into. And thank you everyone for your amazing questions. I think, it really helps us kind of frame the conversation around what's important to you guys. Anthony, have you got any closing remarks or anything that you'd like to share?
Well, I guess just picking up on that earlier question is that a really good place to start is, we have this Work.Life.Better campaign. So on the siliconsouth.org.uk website, Work.Life.Better, there is what we're doing is we're corralling, we kind of created videos so you get a sight inside all of the different agencies, and we're sort of putting together posts from all across the place just to start to build up that idea of going, oh, that's what's going on there. I had no idea there was that much. And I know that Bristol Creative Industries post a huge amount of information on their website, lots of stories. Like Chris was saying, you know, they're really well supported by their sector. So there's lots of posts kind of being put up there. So there's a lot of information around. And I guess if, you know, anybody who's watching this has got people who they know, you know, point them in this direction and that direction, because there's a lot on offer.
Yeah, totally. It is really about us, you know, framing it, and hopefully, like you say, there's some great people listening today that might be able to help us really start, you know, not just for the 3 cities that we're talking about today as well. I think you're outside, you know, to make it more awareness, or to drive awareness around the benefits of working and living outside of London, and of course, you know, the benefits of working in London. You know, all the cities today are really, actually, it's really easy to get into town. It does not take that long. I'm doing it tomorrow, and I do it, you know, often once every week or two. It's not, you know, it's not as much of a mission as you think it might be. So a big thank you to everyone. Anthony, thank you for your closing remarks. Is there going to be any follow-ups or anything going out to those that have signed in and joined us today?
Can we set up a networking event in each city?
Yeah, I love this idea, Amy.
Yeah. Well, we also had one last week. We had about 140 people turned up for a good session in one of the bars in Bournemouth. So yeah, we're doing that every quarter at the moment. So come along and join. Yes, there will be some follow-up, and we will kind of send a link out to all of this. We're also going to promote this out more broadly and try and get more people to be aware of what's going on everywhere.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Anthony, and to all of the amazing panelists today for sharing your insights into your region and highlighting the amazing reasons to go and live and work there. So a big thank you to everyone. I hope you all found this really helpful and useful, and yeah, hopefully see you again at something similar to this very, very soon.
Thanks, Gobi.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys.